much. It's great to be here. When we talk about who we are and what we're doing, we always refer to ourselves as a hybrid blockchain. And this happens on three areas for us that we think is really important. The first is, what's the problem we're trying to solve? The second is, how do we then build a product around it? And the third is, how does the market react, and how does the market look based on that perspective? So I want to start with the problem that we're trying to solve, if I can get this going. And it's, where are the users? So when we look at the blockchain sector today, what we see is there's not a tremendous amount of usage. There's a lot of excitement, there's a lot of vision in terms of where this could go, but we haven't necessarily seen that adoption at the scale we're looking at, or we're looking for. And when you ask, you find a few common answers. That one is the technology is still immature. Two is that there is a lack of talent and skills. And I want to break that down a little bit further. It doesn't mean there aren't amazing people working on this on a daily basis. It means that it's too difficult to implement. If you're a business and you recognize that blockchain could work in your industry for a specific use case, how do you make it happen tomorrow? And it speaks to a bunch of different options that businesses have that aren't all great. So you can build your own blockchain. You can use systems that work today but don't necessarily work the way you want them to. You can look for a new protocol and a new infrastructure on a regular basis. But it's difficult because, as we said, development is hard. We don't necessarily have all of the skills to do this quickly and to move fast. And in any other sector, we'd see infrastructure as something that's a rapid movement between something. But here it's not. So how do you cope as a business? We believe that the model is focused on being a hybrid. So what does it mean to be hybrid? Hybrid says a few things. The first thing is that, let's say the gentleman was correct and Bitcoin disappears. You should not be in a situation where you are completely dependent on Bitcoin. You need to be in a situation where you can move quickly to Ethereum, or to Color, or to another platform. The second element that it says is that different levels and layers are going to have different values. So certain base layers, let's say Ethereum, are going to be exceptional at providing liquidity. Maybe they're going to be exceptional at providing security, but it's not enough. And there's a fundamental divide between the ability of these platforms to ultimately provide both high-end decentralization and high-end productivity. And that's where having a hybrid blockchain becomes important. Because when you take a base layer that's powerful, and you add a productivity layer that's powerful, that can address the real business needs, all of a sudden, you have a stack, like you would in any other industry, in any other sector, that can allow for real business usage, not 10 years from now, not 5 years from now, tomorrow. And it can enable businesses the ability to move into a sector that they know they want to get into, but don't necessarily have the ability to dive into immediately. So we approach this by providing productivity. Take Ethereum as an example. But next time we speak, we're going to use Color only. What we have here is tremendous liquidity. We have wallets and exchanges. We have lots of people using it. We have a built-out community. We have an ecosystem. We have ICOs that have already built on a specific token. But what we don't have is production. If we get out of production here, all of a sudden the business has a real opportunity to identify a place where blockchain can have an impact. And this is critical, because blockchain for the sake of blockchain isn't that exciting. But blockchain for the accomplishment of real goals becomes something far more interesting. If we can use blockchain to make end users part of the value chain, if we can use blockchain to make it that as an individual who uses a platform, I'm part of that experience, that's a real value. If we can use blockchain to increase competition, to make it easier for a business to come up and compete both on a national and on a global scale, that's a real value. And that's what we can provide by combining the efforts of multiple chains to bring the values that they each have to the table. So how do we do this? We do this in a couple of ways. The first thing we focus on is virtual chains. Virtual chains allow businesses to operate in a siloed environment even though they are based on a decentralized platform. So if we have a situation like CryptoKitties and a system gets overloaded because someone's success has been tremendous, you don't need to worry that your system is going to fall as well. And this is fundamental because if you're a business, you cannot take the risk of saying, well, if a competitor of mine has a great day, I'll fall off and just won't be able to do anything. The other element we do is something that we call randomized proof of stake. Randomized proof of stake brings together the values of speed and security. And it's a unique algorithm that we recently presented at a conference in Cambridge. And it essentially allows you to bring these two worlds together so that you can both have a large base, a large decentralized network, but still move quickly based on randomized proof of stake, so that at any point you can have the benefits of thousands of nodes, while the speed of multiple, because it would be impossible to predict which nodes would be part of any specific consensus question. So, if you can combine security and speed, and if you can bring high-level production through virtualization, what else is missing? We believe that what's missing is flexibility. As a business, you need the ability to customize certain elements of what you're doing. You need the ability to say, I need certain components to be slightly different in the early stages so that I can move myself to a fuller decentralized environment over time. And addressing these needs in the short term is what's going to drive mass adoption. This is the other critical element of having a hybrid approach. We do not believe that blockchain is just going to happen because we build it. We believe that we are going to bring the world into blockchain, and in so doing we are going to change the way that the world operates. But to do so, we have to bring the adoption with us. We have to show businesses that they can have value, that they can come on a journey. And this has been one of the key elements to Orbs' approach and our success in the short term. This is why we work with companies like Yes24. This is why we work with companies like Zinc and Endor and others around the world. Because we show them that the value of blockchain can be brought to you in the near term, and we show them that there's a process to use this over the long term, that the values that you gain will not somehow go away, they will only increase as you become increasingly decentralized. And it ends with the key factor here, which is when we're doing something in this space, we have to remember what is the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish, and then therefore how do we get there. In our industry, there's too much of a polarization between companies that are fully committed to the hopes of decentralization with a build it and they will come attitude. If we have a public network, everything will come to it. But we've seen that that's not necessarily the case. Where is the usage? But on the flip side, we have companies that have said, okay, we'll build something that's far more private. We'll build something that a business would use tomorrow, but it doesn't necessarily align with the long-term vision of decentralization. And for us, both of those perspectives are lacking. And what they need is a complementary perspective that enables two things. One, it enables us not to forget why we're doing this. We're doing this because decentralization and public blockchains offer a unique opportunity to redefine the way that businesses work. To not just redefine, but to improve. To help the end user. To help improve competition. This is why in the earlier panel, the government is so excited about what this can be, because it makes things not just different, not just faster, but fundamentally better. So we must keep that mentality and that focus in mind in order that we stay the course of what the technology can ultimately provide for us. But secondly, we can't forget that if we build something amazing that nobody can use, we haven't really changed all that much. And I don't think that any of us want to wait decades to see blockchain take off as a technology. So we must take the steps that are necessary in order to drive real adoption in the short term. And the way to do that is to help and support amazing blockchain companies and decentralized applications. But it's also to show large businesses that they can drive value on the blockchain tomorrow. And this is the hybrid approach. And with a hybrid approach and a hybrid technology, we believe that we can drive real value, real usage, and real change on the blockchain. Thank you.